Hello, magical beings. Welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Sarah and I am the Woodland Witch. I'm actually really nervous to film today. It's been a really long time. I've actually been trying to come back for a little over a month and life has just been lifing. I filmed 2 other videos before this one and they just didn't feel right. As I was editing, it just wasn't right. And I think the main reason for that is that I'm trying to jump back into this the same way that I always did when things are not the same that they always were. A lot has happened in the last year, and before I kind of get back into my regularly scheduled programming and my normal content, I feel like I need to close the gap of where I've been, what's been going on in my life, the good, the bad, the ugly. I've always had kind of an open door policy with my community and the people that I support and choose to support me. I always try to encourage people to meet themselves where they are and share different aspects of their life, not just the highlight reels. And I think that's where my problem lied. I recently came across an older YouTube video of mine. It was filmed about a year ago and something pulled me to just watch it. I don't typically go back and watch my own videos after they've already been edited and things like that. But this one I rewatched and I'm really glad that I did, because I said a few things that past me knew that present me needed to hear again. The video I'm talking about is about reconnecting to your craft, especially in times of grief, mourning, you're burnt out, and you just have no energy. I watched that video and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna completely refilm and approach this in a different way. The truth is, I have had a really, really rough year and a half. I think I have not taken my own advice in a sense of not wanting to share necessarily the not so great parts of what's going on with me. Like I said, I'm always an open book with other people. I always want to encourage them to feel their feelings and go what they're going through and support them and be there for them. But I don't really do that for myself. I always feel like I'm burdening or just being negative, and honestly that's not what I think about other people, so I don't know why I think that about myself. I think a lot of times we tend to not take our own advice, and that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the truth. So I wanted to refilm this and approach it of just being honest about what's been going on in my life, where I've been, some good things, some not so great. But as I stated before, I jump back into my regularly scheduled content and the type of things that I love to post and share about my craft and my life. I think I owe it to you and to myself to just lay it all out there. About a year and a half ago, I started my Saturn return. Now, Saturn returns typically get a bad rep, and they're rough. I'm not even gonna lie. It's rough. Saturn is a planet of upheaval, destruction, chaos, and that can really depend on where it is in your chart, but it can show up in a lot of different ways. For me personally, I think a lot of this Saturn return has been about external things that are completely out of my control. The last 5 years have been really transformative for me internally, and just growing through therapy, more of that spiritual, physical growth type of thing. Whereas I feel like my Saturn return has been so much external things that I just have had no control over. I just have to let it happen to me. And that's been really hard. It kind of started out with my mom getting sick. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that my mom passed away Christmas Day in 2023. This past year in 2024, we honored the 1-year anniversary of that. That was a really, really hard time. And it's something I really truthfully have not fully processed. I've talked about this a little bit on other platforms, but it feels like a physical piece of me is just not there anymore. My mom and I didn't always see eye to eye. It wasn't until I began practicing witchcraft, ironically enough, that we really began to work and heal on our relationship. Once she kind of saw me get into therapy, she started to get very intrigued, and it saved our relationship. And that's why it was kind of so hard, is because right when things were in such a beautiful place for us, she passed away. And I don't say that like, you know, my mom and I had a horrible relationship or anything like that. Just as you grow, you go through stages with your parents, I think, where you just don't see eye to eye. They've been through the things, they try to teach you, and you're like, I know better type of thing. And that's where I was. After going through all that healing, we became like best friends, especially after I became a mom. We were closer than ever. And so that has really been something that's been hard for me to get over. Shortly after losing my mom, I went through a miscarriage, and that was something I never expected to happen. I don't think anybody really does when it does happen. Even though you're told it's not anything that you did wrong, it's your body's way of knowing that something wasn't right. I couldn't accept that for a little while. I think after that, I tried to kind of jump back into the same old, more of like an escape when I go through really hard times. And this is something I think within my Saturn return I'm learning as well, is learning to let things flow. And I know when traumatic things happen, you sometimes go into shock and it takes time to process them. I even said this in the video I was watching back that kind of led me to create this type of a video today, that I'm someone who just wants to get through it. Like, it's been terrible, okay, like I just want to get through this. And I tend to dive back into my creative endeavors as sort of an escape, and it's to my detriment sometimes. I'm definitely someone who buries and just tries to focus on life because life is just still happening around you, and I'm just like, okay, I have things to do. I have to get this done. Like, I can't wallow in this. And then I let it bubble over and explode. I think my Capricorn stellium has a little bit of something to do with that. I don't want to say emotion is uncomfortable for me. It's just like, this is not what I want to be doing right now. So that is something that I've really been learning in my Saturn return, is to be more present with my grief, my heartache, the things that I'm experiencing, letting myself feel everything. And that's really hard to do sometimes for anybody, I think, especially when you go through such exponential loss. So I kind of spent the summer diving back into my creativity and really trying to just keep going. I eventually just hit a brick wall, especially with like burnout, emotionally, physically, mentally. And I really felt that creativity just fizzle out because it was so overrun with things that I wasn't facing and allowing myself to process and feel. By just diving into work and my business and all of these things, it just really hurt me in the long run. And so these last few months, as I've been trying to come back and trying to be a part of this space again, I've found myself continuing to hit this brick wall. That's because I've been trying to show up in the same ways that I always did when I haven't felt the same way that I did. A lot has happened, and I've really tried to be transparent with that. A couple of weeks ago, we also lost our first dog. He was our little man. We got him before we got married, my husband and I, and he saw it all. He saw us get married. He saw us become a family. He saw us go through the hardest times of our life. He just was there for everything. It was just devastating. He was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma, and I've already lost my dad and my mom to cancer. It being because of cancer was so triggering. It was just so triggering for me. This is something that's caused a lot of trauma in regards to my health and well-being. A couple years ago, I was diagnosed with like high functioning anxiety and depression, which has kind of been thought to be stemming from an overall issue of OCD. And I know a lot of people think that OCD is just, oh my God, you like things really particular, you like things really clean. No, that is not what it is. It is oftentimes focusing on really crippling thoughts that you just want to do anything and everything to forget about, and you can't stop thinking about it. You can't stop. And one of those things is with my health, and that is something I didn't always have. It's definitely been a trauma-induced diagnosis for me because I have experienced so much loss, specifically due to cancer or major health issues within my own family. And so fighting those thoughts on a daily basis is a constant struggle, and that just sent me into a spiral kind of all over again. I felt like I was just coming to a place after losing my mom where I had come down from that, and I was starting to feel like quote unquote normal in my thoughts. I wasn't heavily focusing on those things. I was able to become a little bit more lax, and that just kind of sent it into a spiral all over again. That has been something I've also been working on with my doctor and my therapist and all of the things to try and get my headspace back to feeling safe again, I think is the word I'd like to use. I've experienced and seen so much death in my life, not even just within my own family. When I was 18, I decided to become a death doula. My main job was helping transition people to the other side, comforting families in that time. I also did basic home care. It was all private home care. Saw a lot of people transition. I saw a lot of families experience what I experienced, and it gave me a sense of pride to know that I was helping someone go through something that I had gone through, especially at such a young age. I saw people's young kids, families, grandchildren have to watch their loved ones pass on. And as rewarding in a sense as that job was, it did become very taxing mentally and spiritually to be around such loss, exponential loss all the time. But even working in that field, I don't think it ever really gets any easier, especially when it comes to your own family. Even though I had seen it happen, I had experienced it so many times within my own family and externally in other families. It just never ever gets easier. So my Saturn return has honestly been a lot of those feelings coming up again. And honestly experiencing a lot of those things again. That type of grief is just so heavy, and it really changes your entire being as a person. So I'd be lying if I came on here and just acted like I've been so connected to my craft and things have been great and I've just been healing and yada yada. It's just not been that way. I think I've really had some of the lowest points of my life the last year and a half. All this year and a half has also been really hard and challenging. There have been a lot of positive shifts and changes in my life. One of those things being that my husband, who I'm so immensely proud of, after 3 years of just working incredibly hard, he is about to graduate from school as a firefighter. That is going to drastically change our life in so many ways, and I'm just so proud of him. And things have been really chaotic, I want to say. I don't want to say it's been super challenging, but he is so focused and working so hard, and that's kind of had to divvy out responsibility a little bit differently in our household. So there's a lot of things just in my regular day-to-day life and in my home life with my daughter that have taken precedent over really being able to focus on content creating and doing the things that I really love to do. That is only temporary, but it has been a major shift for us. And I know in the long run, it's just going to be one of the most amazing things that's happened for our family. He's worked so hard, and I'm so excited for him to be doing a career that he is proud of and that he loves, and for this next stage of our lives. Another really positive thing I want to talk about is something that did stem from the loss of my mother. This has also been an aspect of my Saturn return in the sense of extreme ancestral healing. My mother was adopted, and I spoke a little bit about this on IG if you follow me there, but my mother was adopted and she had reconnected with her birth parents very young. I think she was maybe 21. She found them in Connecticut, where I grew up, and I've always really been big into ancestry, building a tree. I've always been so curious about my family. We have such a blended family in so many aspects that I had so many questions. I just wanted to know everything. I'm really big on family. I don't care how distant of a relative you are. Your family to me, I that's also sometimes to a detriment, and I'm learning that lesson as well, that not everybody in your family has your best interest at heart or loves you the same way that you love them, and that's okay. But I digress. I still have always been very curious about it. One of the roadblocks that I hit in our family tree was my mom's birth mother. I knew her name and I knew who she was. I apparently met her when I was very young, under 2 years old. So I had no idea, what she looked like or anything. I had no recollection or memory of her in any capacity. About 2 weeks before my mom passed away, she had me over for dinner. We had moved her up here with us to New Hampshire, and me and my sister were here with her. And she had me over for dinner, and she said she kind of had started giving me things to take home. Just, odds and ends that, she thought I might want. She sat me down and she said, Sarah, when you go back to the house where she actually lived, she lived in Pennsylvania, but when you go back to the house, I know when you guys go to clear my things, you're gonna find a very large red chest. She said, that red chest is yours. I said, okay. She said, every question that you've ever had, every answer that you're seeking regarding my adoption, my birth mother, my family, everything that you've wanted to know will be in that chest. It's gonna make me kind of tear up now because, I don't think she was ever ready to really face that for herself. But she knew that I would. And she said that I hope that you can find her and tell her what happened to me and, connect with her in some way. Some weeks later, my mom passes away, and a couple months later, we end up going to her home and going through things. And sure enough, she had set that red chest out right for me, and I took it home. And when I got home, of course, I was so eager to just deep dive right away and get into it. And I found so many things. So many things. The first thing being letters that they had written to each other. I also found pictures and kind of all of the research material my mom had when she was searching for them and trying to find them, and all of the addresses and phone numbers that she was searching for, and all of these things, which just, it was crazy to see. Like, my mom went on this major journey to find her birth parents, and everything was in there. And a couple other things I found in there were papers that my grandmother had written for school. She was an English major. She's a writer. She writes poetry. She's just so awesome. And one of the papers she wrote was about Greek mythology. And she shared with my mom in some of these letters after sending that paper that she was a practicing witch. So my biological grandmother was a practicing witch, and I just lost my mind. I talked a little bit about it when I told my mom that I was a witch, that she was just like, okay. Like, not surprised, which is shocking because my mother was very religious, but she was so accepting of everything that I did. And she said, Sarah, I know where your heart's at. I know you're a good person. And, I trust that whatever you feel guided to in terms of the universe, God, spirit, I trust that your heart is in the right place. She didn't call me a Satan worshiper or think that I was in cahoots with the devil or anything like that. That a typical, Catholic, Christian, Protestant type of belief system would lead you to think. So finding out my biological grandmother was a practicing witch, she still is, but she's a lot older now, she's kind of fallen out of her practices, but it's still very much a belief system that she carries, which is so awesome. The coolest part was that in my ancestry DNA, a large part of my ancestry is Germanic Europe. Now ancestry DNA is constantly changing. I don't even really look into that anymore. But that large chunk of Germanic Europe has not changed at all. And I always knew it was from my mother's side of the family. Ancestry will show you parent 1 and parent 2 in terms of where your DNA comes from. And I was always kind of curious about it. I didn't know much about it. Like I said, we weren't super connected with her family growing up. So anyway, she, in those letters, expressed that she was a Germanic pagan, practiced Germanic folk magic, and it was just like, I don't know, all the stars aligning. It was the craziest thing. So once I got through all of those letters, I began my search. I was going to find her. I spent weeks trying to find her. I was hitting dead ends everywhere. Dead end phone numbers, dead end addresses. I had no idea. She had no social media. I had no idea how to find her. I didn't know what the heck I was looking for. I had one more phone number for an apartment complex, one more phone number. And I called it and I spoke to the front desk and I said, hey, I know you can't really tell me if, she's here, but I have a message for her. And she took the message down and, she's like, okay. Like, she was kind of insinuating, like, I don't think she would have taken the message if she didn't think that she was there. So I was hopeful. And within a week, I got a call back from her. And she said, Sarah, hi, I never expected to hear from any of you. You know, I think I know what you're going to be calling about, but I, would love to talk. And I called her back and we just had a great conversation. We shared pictures. She, shared me a picture of what she looks like now, and I shared pictures of me and my daughter and my husband and our family. And we started texting. We stayed in connection. We talked a little bit about like witchcraft and things like that. We talked about potentially meeting up. So this past October, I went to go visit one of my sisters. She lives in Connecticut still. And on the way to where she lives just so happens to be where my biological grandmother lives. So I reached out to her. I asked if she wanted to meet up and she was all for it. And I brought my family, my husband and my daughter, to go, and we met her and we had a lovely breakfast. It was amazing. And, not only that, I received a lot of things from her, and I want to share just like a couple of them because it's been so healing for me after losing my mom. Like, this is one of the things that is just really like, this was such an amazing thing to come from that. The first thing being her original Book of Shadows, which is insane to think that my grandmother passed me down her original Book of Shadows. It's crazy. And one of the things that inspired me a lot was, she was very open that she wasn't very financially well off, and her craft was built a lot on accessibility, which, if you've been following me for a while, sounds a little familiar. Very accessible, practical witchcraft, which is everything that I promote on my platforms. And, she was telling me about how she would lead pagan circles and, Sabbath events in her community. I just still like think about it and it's so surreal to me and so amazing. Another thing she passed to me was her first tarot deck. This is the Dragon Tarot. I haven't really messed around with it a whole lot. Yeah, this was her very, very first tarot deck, which is crazy. Also, I know people say like there's that superstition out there that you're supposed to get your tarot deck passed down, and I don't believe in that, but it is still really cool to have an ancestor and family member of mine who's still living who was able to do that and share that with me. Something I'll be able to share with my daughter if she's interested. Another thing she passed down to me was her crystal collection. She was really big on traveling. Some of these crystals she got from around the world, which was just, it meant so much to me. They're all kind of put away in my little cabinet over here, so I'm not going to pull them out. The last thing that she gave me, which is probably one of my favorite things, was from my great-grandmother. Her mother, Grandma Pauline, she was a quilter and a seamstress, and she passed me down a family quilt that is not yet finished that she wants me to finish. I haven't quilted since probably home ec in high school, but I do love to sew and I think that I could potentially learn. So that's, on the list, but this is the quilt. There's no backing to it. But the special thing about it is that she saved all of these little pieces. She cut them out of clothing from our ancestors and our family members for, I don't know, decades. So all of these little rounds are pieces of clothing of all of my ancestors and all of my family members that have been sewn into this quilt. And she passed it to me to finish and to add to. I still am just like blown away. Like, it just doesn't feel real. And in a weird way, like, I did lose someone so important in my life, but I gained something so amazing as well. Not that it would ever be a replacement, but to have this relationship with a biological grandmother. I didn't have, a lot of my grandparents passed away when I was very young, and I didn't really get to experience that type of relationship. And to have this is amazing. We still talk regularly. And she's so supportive of everything that I do. It's just really, really amazing. Not only has it been healing for me, but I do believe it's been healing for my ancestral lineage as well, and that relationship with her and my mom. They both made a lot of mistakes, and I don't think they really got to have the relationship that they wanted. Her having that relationship with me and being able to share things with me about my mom's adoption and things that my mom never got to know, which I believe she knows now, just means the world. And I think it's been so healing immensely for our lineage and for our family. So these are things that I'm going to cherish forever and share with my daughter. Keep you updated when I finish this. All right, magical beings. So that is where I've been and what's been going on in my life. I know this video is probably going to be a little bit longer, but like I said, all of the videos I tried to film to share with you, they didn't flow quite as well as this one. I'm really working on trying not to be forced and only sharing the highlight reel, because that is something I am so adamant about with other creators and other people in my community. I want everyone to just be real with where you're at, meet yourself where you are, and be honest and not put on a front for anybody. And so I really wanted to do that for you. I look forward to getting back to my normal content again. I have really missed it. And while I'm still deep into my Saturn return, I think that things have been really shifting in a positive way. And I look forward to sharing where those shifts take me next. Until then, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being here as always, and I will see you in the next one.